Hydro is a global aluminium producer. We are 36,000 employees. We do mining, melting, forming, rolling all over the world. It was very early in the morning and I got a phone call that something seriously was going wrong. We couldn't open files anymore, and instead of opening documents we would see a ransom note saying that the systems were encrypted. The first stage is to see us as a victim. People started to come to work and be motivated to really deal with the challenge.
Nunavut is a territory of 25 communities. It's very large, very remote.
The government services are in all communities, and we do educational services, health services, financial across the territory. So at about 20 after 8 in the morning, I got a call. We've lost our financial services. We've lost our health services. Medivacs, these are communities are remote. There's no doctors in a lot of them. And in a matter of a few hours, it took out all of our workstations, all of our servers, our phone systems right across the territory in all 25 communities.
It shut down government. We had no phones, we had no computers. Everybody wanted to help. We started off, I think, with 12 people, and it got to 100 people, and then pretty soon we had 120 people in the room.
Hundreds of people that just wanted to help right across the territory.
In an emergency like that, my most impactful memory was the people, the teams.
To make sure that people were motivated, we had to be transparent.
A lot of people took it very personally, and they want to fight this. We didn't have any, I think, impact on delivery to customers due to the cyber attack. And I think the transparency was a big part of that.
Prevention alone will not save you. Value your people. Because when systems are down, whether a company survives or succeeds is all about the people that are there.
And the only way you're going to get through that is through knowledge sharing, information sharing, being collaborative, and working with one another.
It gave us a really good opportunity to build a new foundation. And there's a lot more things that we're able to do now that would have taken us years to get to. And we did it in 3 weeks. So it's a whole new IT world for us.
We usually say that our production is dependent 80% of people and 20% of machinery. We see similarity in the defense of the cyber attack. The people are the most important thing.
Hydro has been recognized in cyber response. That had a lot to do with how the 36,000 people have stood up for the challenge and be creative and deliver in the most adverse circumstances possible. And then ultimately came out stronger than how we started.
Please welcome Corporate Vice President, Cybersecurity Solutions Group, Microsoft, Ann Johnson.
Good afternoon. You know, it used to be the case that if you saw a major attack on a global industrial manufacturing company or an attack on a government in a vast Arctic territory, you were actually watching a Bond movie. But what we've learned, and you saw in this video, is that life often imitates art, and our industry deals with these kinds of threats every single day. These attacks can be devastating. They're devastating far beyond the company's bottom line, right? They think about that. But it's disruptions in regular workflow. It can be disastrous and upend the financial security of even the families that work for these organizations. Compromised personal data can lead to a lifetime of uncertainty. We fear that we're going to have future attacks. And without a robust cyber response, threats can drag on endlessly. And they wear down folks that actually did nothing wrong in the first place. You know, as an industry, we talk a lot about how we use artificial intelligence and how we use machine learning to analyze massive amounts of security and threat intelligence data. We talk at Microsoft about how we see 8 trillion signals each day for detection and for prevention. And of course, on the machine side, we can rapidly separate threats, real ones from false ones. But it's really on the human side that we focus on the highest priority, on the actionable tasks. And when we go to work every day, We are defending against and we are fixing problems that are potentially devastating not just for businesses, but for the employees of those businesses around the planet. In his 2018 book, AI Superpowers, Kai-Fu Lee wrote about the need to balance artificial intelligence with human empathy. He talked about how our future depends on AI's ability to think, coupled with a human's ability to love. And I can't agree more with that sentiment. We work on some of the most pervasive issues in tech. And by the way, I was joking with someone, I said, that's a pretty bold statement because there are an awful lot of issues in tech. However, as we think about the issues we deal with, like digital privacy, ransomware, hybrid cloud security, and we are constantly in an evolving and escalating cyber arms race. We are also facing new challenges. We think about election security. We're thinking about the increase in nation-state attacks. We're thinking about political misinformation and things like deepfakes, all types of new threats to us. So while I'm standing here on stage, I do want to say that I'm ready whenever they want to hire me as a consultant for the next Bond movie. Probably won't happen. But while I wait for Hollywood to invest in my predictions about the future of AI and technology, I actually want to start by revisiting the past. Does anyone here know where this text came from? And I would encourage you to shout it out if you do. Join me. Come on, it's the afternoon. Have some fun. The program with a personality, it will get on all your disks. It will infiltrate your chips. Yes, it's Cloner. It will stick to you like glue. It will modify your RAM too. Send in the Cloner. This is the text that displayed on Apple II computers after being infected with the ELK cloner virus in 1982. It was written as a prank by a precocious 15-year-old named Rick Scaranta, and it is the first real PC computer virus that actually spread in the wild. Rick discovered a machine vulnerability, and he decided to have a little bit of fun exploiting it. His friends would trade games on floppy disks. I don't even want to know how many people in the audience don't know what a floppy disk is. But they traded games, so he wrote a boot sector virus to trigger after a game loaded for the 50th time. He put it on a floppy disk, and he sent it out to his friends, and he set it loose. Now, the worst crime that Rick committed was mediocre poetry. But there is a lesson here about the ELK cloner virus episode, and it's still relevant to what we do today in cybersecurity. What that teenager exploited all the way back in 1982 wasn't just the machine's vulnerability, it was also the human vulnerability of ordinary people. That is some of the same problems that plague us as an industry today. In the video you just watched, you heard a little about what happened to Hydro, the global aluminum manufacturer headquartered in Oslo, and you also heard about what happened in the Nunavut government in Ontario, or in Canada. They're in the Northern Territory in Canada. The Hydro attack started in March of last year. It started as a ransomware attack that spread across 40 countries, impacting 35,000 employees. And the dominoes started to fall after one single employee opened an infected email from a trusted source. This opened the door just enough to let the hackers in. There's a reason we actually call these things Trojans. It's for a good name. Much like history's first virus, the users of the infected machines were treated to an unwanted message. However, instead of a teenage troll's poem, they actually got a ransom note demanding a payout in Bitcoin. The hackers captured administrative credentials, they encrypted files, and they actually paralyzed the organization. Production was shut down at the company's largest plant. And the C-suite had to make a lot of really tough decisions at this point in time. Should they negotiate? Should they pay? Should they try to contain the story, keep it from the public? Or should they actually go public? In the end, they made some really smart decisions. They decided to be fully transparent with their employees, they decided to be fully transparent with the public, and they called in the Microsoft DART team to help them with their response. It is always our advice that if you get hit with a ransomware attack, you should never pay the ransom. As painful and as destructive as that can be, the consequences can be far worse if you actually pay the ransom. Many of you have heard the expression, "Don't feed the birds." Well, that's because the birds will come back to the places where they are consistently being fed. The same thing is true for cyber criminals. They are looking for weakness in cyber defenses, and when they find them, they will continually exploit them over and over again. In the case of the Hydro attack, high-tech forensics, crisis management, machine learning, all played a critical role in the response. But it's really worth mentioning that one of the most effective innovations we used to mitigate the damage was kind of retro. It was actually human handwriting. The executives at Hydro hand-wrote messages, and then they photographed those messages with their mobile phones. They then texted the messages to their managers. The managers went and had those messages printed and photocopied at a photocopy shop in their local town, and they hung them around the building to inform the employees of the event and also to provide them further instruction. This allowed them to keep the event from spreading any further. In the attack on the Nunavut government, which happened last year also in November, we're looking at a very similar type of attack, but a very different victim. The Nunavut CIO mentioned in the video, it affected people in every community. They lost healthcare services. They lost financial services. Their first responders could not provide emergency medical services, and they had to rebuild. But like Hydro, they absolutely refused to pay the ransom. They reverted to old low-tech solutions like paper forms and fax machines as a temporary stopgap to keep their systems running. And they also worked with our DART team to help them rebuild their environment. When all was said and done, we were able to mount successful defenses with these customers in both attacks through a combination of a few things. We leveraged technology, of course. We leveraged new things like machine learning. We prescribed folks to use MFA. We talked about their backup strategy. We talked about smart processes, things that could be changed. But most importantly, we leveraged the really good people at Hydro and the really good people at Nunavut that came together and really collaborated to get those systems back online. The attackers aren't stupid. None of them are. But they failed to anticipate just how innovative, how ambitious, and how aggressive the problem solvers, the humans, would be. They underestimated the target, and they underestimated those teams. They underestimated the creativity, and they underestimated the compassion. And they failed to anticipate the one thing that both Hydro and Nunavut could put to action: the actual human spirit. If you take nothing else away from what I'm saying today, take it from me that in cybersecurity, investing in the human element will always give the good guys an edge. And we absolutely can't wait. I'm not an alarmist, but the stakes are getting higher. Attackers are targeting everything: intellectual property, critical infrastructure, and elections. If you think about a conversation I recently had with Chris Wysopal, who is now the CTO of Veracode, we were talking about how in 1998 he was called to testify about cybersecurity issues before the Senate Gubernatorial Affairs Committee of the US, and he went with some of his fellow hackers. You should watch the testimony if you have a moment. It's worth watching. It's fascinating. It's a little bit surreal, actually. And it opens with the chairman, Senator Fred Thompson of Tennessee. He's sitting fairly imperiously over these hackers. As a side note, this was just a few years after Thompson had actually starred in The Hunt for Red October and in Die Hard 2. It's a big presence for these young hackers. And he looks down at the group and he opens his remarks by saying, due to the sensitivity of their work, they will be using their hacker names. They will be using Mudge and Weld and Brian Oblivion and Kingpin and Space Rogue. They were using not their real names, but they were actually using their hacker names. He went on, well, before I go there, on a side note, I actually think it would be worth the price of a plane ticket to DC if you could get a sitting US senator to refer to you as either kingpin or space rogue. And as a matter of fact, if I ever get asked to testify before Congress, my hacker name is CyberDino, which is a name I share with the ceramic dinosaur that accompanies all around the world to talk about cybersecurity. But back to the story. Chris was recounting the fact that what would happen if one of America's adversaries actually had the skills that that young group of hackers would have. What would happen? He talked about how unprepared and unsecured both corporations and government entities were for malicious actors. His friends talked about how easy it would be to actually turn off the internet. And as I talked to Chris later, he reflected on the fact that they were the only ones that understood the urgency of the problem, who were sitting in the room at that time. He also reflected on the fact that they were nowhere near where we are today in terms of the scope and the scale of cyber attacks. We didn't live in the world of nation-state cyber war like we do today. We are prepared, but we simply must do better and be better prepared moving forward. We are still operating under laws that were generated and produced during the typewriter era. We need to rewrite some of those laws and build up some of those capabilities to keep an eye on the technology and the attacks of today. The consequence of the inaction among our leaders are enormous, but they're not entirely unpredictable. We just have to listen to the right people. And I fundamentally believe there are more benevolent white hats and wise cyber warriors out there than there are malicious ones. We need to keep an eye out for those folks, and we actually need to listen to those folks. In 2018, an 11-year-old hacked a Florida voting machine at DEF CON in under 2 minutes. Rachel Toback, who's the CEO of Social Proof Security, has right now pinned on her Twitter feed a tweet that shows that she could hack a similar system in 2 minutes. It's scary if you're cynical. I'm a lot of things. The one thing I'm not is cynical. I'm kind of a stack half full kind of geek. I'm excited for our future because I believe in the fundamental goodness of most people. The young people digging for vulnerabilities in our systems today are exactly the people I want to hire to guarantee our security of the future. So let the cynics laugh, but here's wisdom in that. Mr. Rogers said in the wake of the 9/11 attacks in the US, when he was a boy, and he saw scary things in the news, his mother would say to look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. Now, maybe you didn't grow up in the Mr. Rogers era, but for my generation, he was more than a children's entertainer. He taught kids that they had value, that they were worthy of love, but he also taught them that they could deal with life's challenges if they did their best to work together to solve hard problems. And that is what we see in the human spirit of cybersecurity. We see examples of these helpers every day. People coming together time and time again, doing what they do best to solve complex problems. The helpers are there. They're working on tomorrow's problems, and they have this unstoppable human spirit. There's so much positive energy in cybersecurity. Whether it's in the wake of a cyber attack like the ones you saw at Hedro and Nunavut, or folks that are working to proactively to defend against those types of attacks. In our industry, these helpers are cyber defenders. These are the people who are leveraging technology to make notable progress for our cyber defenses. And it's not just the responsibility of global governments. We talk a lot about government, but it's going to take an ecosystem of all of us, public and private sector, academic institutions, researchers, and yes, tech companies. I started today talking about how human vulnerabilities are a given in the tech space. It goes back to the bad poetry of 1982, the early education of the US Congress in 1998, election interference in 2016. It's pretty much baked into the pie. And there's no reason to believe, by the way, that cybercrime is going anywhere. However, there has also always existed this temptation to believe that a technological utopia, a perfect solution, is around the corner. That certainly does drive innovation, and we will always keep searching for that silver bullet to cybercrime. But I do not believe that artificial intelligence, however advanced it's become, is going to be the perfect solution in our lifetime. I think that things like artificial intelligence and other technologies are as useful as the rare pockets that we have on women's dresses. If you don't actually know how to use them, and you don't know they're there, they're not very useful. Yeah, all the women in the audience understand that joke. And you may disagree, but I also think that superintelligence singularity is still a really long ways off. I shared this quotation at the start of my talk, and I want to refer to it again. AI alone is not enough. We need to combine AI with that human empathy, because we need both humans and technology working together. If we can create this kind of synergy, we actually can harness the power that we have, and we can generate prosperity, and we can solve a lot of problems collectively. We need to embrace the human spirit that we have in cybersecurity. And trust me, I am, as I mentioned, a half-stack full kind of geek. I love dreaming about technology. But I'm actually convinced every day that the most important aspect of our work remains fundamentally human. So let the tech romantics yearn for utopia, and let the pessimists assume our imminent distinction. I'm a realist, and I'm interested in finding the best that humanity has to offer to help shape our shared future. As I close, I want to tell you one more story. At age 11, a girl named Aditi Shah in India was diagnosed with a genetic disorder that gradually decreases a person's vision. At age 15, she was almost completely blind, only able to see light and dark. She had to relearn how to learn. But through hard work, she made it all the way to Georgia Tech, where she completed her master's degree in cybersecurity. She joined Microsoft last December as a cybersecurity software intern, and I'm really looking forward to the great things that she is going to accomplish. I also have a really special soft spot for Aditi. I was also born with a genetic vision defect. I have no vision in my right eye. For years, I hid that because I was afraid kids in school would make fun of me. As an adult, I hid it because I was afraid employers would deny me opportunity. They would see me as somehow defective. And I had dreams once of being a Navy fighter pilot. However, it turns out that the military isn't all that keen on handing over the keys to a $15 million jet to someone who can't even check traffic over the right shoulder. Not quite sure why. So I adjusted my plans for life. And today I am proud of the fact that I am one of the helpers in such an important industry, working with a team that solves problems and makes changes for the betterment of society. I am also proud that I am allowed to work for a company that would hire someone like me and someone like Aditi. So if you're responsible for hiring people, you need to consider the challenges folks overcome, and you need to do the extra work to find people like Aditi, because the ideas they will bring to your organization are invaluable. And if you are responding to a cyber attack, be forgiving of the human weakness that we all share that may have led you there, and celebrate the strengths that make us resilient in defending against those attacks. I want to thank RSA again for allowing me to speak, and because I'm not ashamed to pander, I want to show the things that actually help my human spirit every single day, my four-legged and two-legged children. Thank you so much. Have a great day.